Today we're celebrating the 75th day of the Russian army running out of food. We're not done, it's also been 65 days since the collapse of the Russian military. Oh my god, I almost forgot, it's also the 75th birthday of the Russian army running out of trucks. And since the chorus sounds so well, it's the 57th day of the Russian army running out of missiles. And at this point you might ask, what have they not run out of? Tanks! They're running out of tanks now. 100% legitimate, trust the science. Usually I don't like to analyze single pictures or videos and draw enormous conclusions out of it. I'll leave that honor to the bro-synth community. But in this video, I have to admit I noticed a strange pattern of videos coming from the Ukrainian side. And I just had to tell you about it. Hi and welcome to History Legends. Here are the latest news about the Russo-Ukrainian war. Here we cut the BS and talk about what the media doesn't tell you. As always, information changes by the hour, so if you have any new information, just comment it below. If you're new to this channel, make sure to check out my Ukraine playlist so you don't miss anything I've said in the past. As you know, some of my Ukraine videos have been targeted with limited or no ads, and I wanted to thank all of you that have helped me since the last video. And if you want to help to keep the show running, make sure to check out my Patreon, the link is in the description. Crisis on the front line. According to the very serious, honorable Institute of the Study of War, the limited Ukrainian counterattack in northern Kherson Oblast did not take any further ground in the last 48 hours, but has disrupted Russian operations, rather than a wider counteroffensive to recapture large areas of terrain. Sprinkle, sprinkle, euphemism. In other words, the counteroffensive failed. Like I said earlier, it seemed that Ukrainian forces have evacuated from their breachhead, but honestly there's very little info as to what actually happened. According to the Russian side, a Ukrainian battalion actually managed to push deep into enemy territory when it was ambushed by artillery and they suffered heavy losses, allegedly 20 vehicles and about 150 to 200 killed. But like I said, I can't confirm this. The prestigious Institute of the Study of War continues. Mounting casualties among Russian junior officers will likely further degrade Russian capabilities and lead to further morale breakdowns. The UK Ministry of Defense stated on May 30 that Russian forces have suffered devastating losses among mid and junior ranking officers. Come on. How could they possibly know that? It's so detailed. Could it be that they're projecting videos from the front line? In the past few days I stumbled upon a couple videos, and before haters attack me, these are publicly available, it's not a secret. Remember that video of Ukrainian soldiers posing that border post at the Russian border and this entire photo operation video? Well, this other Ukrainian soldier has a different perspective of this event.
Була знищена техніка. Вони злиняли, а ми 5 днів стояли насмерть під градами, мурсами, ураганами, танками, які з 5 ранку до 12 години дня нас просто фігачив. А потім вже з'являлася авіація, потім саушки з'являлися, а ви їх, вибачте, вітаєте за те, що вони нахуй, я вибачаюсь, щось там зробили, а вони засали змінити нас, коли ми цього потребували. Бо моральний і психічний стан на той момент людей був дуже слабкий. Ми зайшли, ми втримали, передали наші позиції, а вони до якоїсь там рубежа вийшли. Причому, що є відео там, де вони цей стовп тягнуть самі. Тобто, що це може? Я можу теж з хлопцями зробити такий стовп, вийти до будь-якої посадки, сказати, що це границя, і піти звідти. Так що 227-й сруни, сикуни, які нас хуй змінили. Слава Україні! Героям слава!
As you know, Liman fell rather quickly into Russian hands, like in only 4 days. We don't really know what happened, but check out this video. Here you can see Ukrainian soldiers on an armored vehicle retreating at all speed from Liman. This withdrawal doesn't seem to be done in an organized manner, as they're picking up any stragglers left behind along the way, and we can sense a certain feeling of panic. There are also rumors of some sort of mass surrender at Liman, allegedly 500 prisoners of war. But honestly, I didn't believe it until I found this video.
Сдался в плен, нас была группа из 16 человек. Мы были в подвале церкви. Вот с этих 16 человек, 5 человек только прибыло новых. с леса, ну, наверное, вы знаете, прибыло. И мы приняли для себя решение не уходить, потому что это очень страшно, а просто сдать.
Now maybe not 500 prisoners, but there were a lot. Now you might ask, why would this happen? One of the perks of allowing your men to carry cell phones is that they can film enemy destroyed vehicles, local tactical success. But it also allows them to complain on social media. Like the soldiers stuck in a trench appealing to the president for immediate reinforcements and more artillery support. Lately, a lot of videos popped up of Ukrainian units simply refusing to go back to combat. They complain of no water, no food, no ammo, crappy weapons. But the worst is how their wounded were not taken care of, and because of that, they died. That must really hit the morale of those men, especially if they had a tight bond. Here are men from Severodonetsk. They refuse to go back. They complain of having no support and how their commanders give inadequate orders. Here's the 2nd company of the 46th Battalion. They were promised to be sent to Zaporozhye, but they ended up in Donbass on the front line. They were ordered to defend the town of Kamyshevka, but they claimed to have had no other choice but to withdraw, as their comrades from the 1st company were already surrounded. Now they're treated as deserters. This time it's the appeal of the 3rd company of the 46th Battalion, essentially saying the same thing. In this video you can see soldiers from a battalion from the Cherkasy Territorial Defense that refused to go back to fight. They claimed that on May 22nd they were sent to the front line to carry out a combat mission without the support of any heavy weapons. They refused to carry out the combat mission. In turn, all their weapons and protective equipment was taken away from them, and they were threatened with arrest. They complained that they had suffered a large number of wounded and that no qualified medical personnel could take care of them. Here you can see men of the 115th Brigade stationed in Severodonetsk that refused to fight. And now you see these same men arrested by the military police for desertion. Here you can see how Ukrainian military police arrested the commander of a retreating unit. One of the soldiers threw a tantrum, trying to prove that they could all have died had they not withdrawn. Here you can see valiant soldiers of the 57th Brigade, again refusing to go back to the front. You can see them argue with their battalion commander, who tries to convince them to go back to battle, but without success. Same thing here with the men of the 14th Brigade, and now the 13th Battalion of the 58th Brigade. Men of the 71st Brigade. They say that they have no armored vehicles and they only have a couple of unreliable mortars. They claim to be sent to the front only through verbal orders without any documents.
It's going relatively well for the Ukrainians.
What is truly happening on the ground? It might not be obvious, but the majority of the units that rebelled were part of the territorial defense. And this is actually the most important clue as to understand why it all happened. When weapons and military equipment arrives in Western Ukraine, it's like turning on the faucet. As the water flows, there is some sort of hierarchy as to who gets what. As the weapons move across the country, some units are hoarding the best stuff for themselves. Far-right battalions, or whatever you call it, like Azov, Adar, Kraken, they get first pick. Same thing for units of the regular forces that are considered better quality. And at the end of this flow, territorial units get whatever is left, if anything, because they're considered lower quality. Here you can see Ukrainian soldiers relying on World War I Maxim machine guns. This soldier of the 115th Brigade tries to pull the trigger of his machine gun, but nothing happens. He has to literally hit the gun for it to fire a single round. The return of the famous Tachanka. And on this picture you can see the old and heavily damaged civilian vehicles used by some Ukrainian troops.
It's going relatively well for the Ukrainians.
How would you feel if you were fighting in these conditions? And overall, this disparity between territorial defense units and regular forces creates resentment and distrust. Instead of having either elite or low quality units, a good solution would be to mix them up, like the French army did during the French Revolution. Every brigade was made of 2 battalions of volunteers supported by 1 battalion of well-trained regulars from the Royal Army. The system could be replicated in Ukraine at the company or battalion levels to even out the quality of frontline units. I was talking to a foreign volunteer the other day. He's fighting currently in Donbass, and he told me, I quote, "We as a foreigner battalion are at the bottom of the line of supplies. Most of the equipment we get is coming directly from the US or other foreign agencies. But the worst thing is that we get used anyway like a special forces group. He went on to explain how, because of poor coordination, one day they went to attack Russian positions, but the Ukrainian mechanized unit that was supposed to be there in support never showed up. And now the foreign guys were left all alone with all the Russians. Eventually, a territorial defense unit noticed them and informed them of the actual situation. And then they all got the F out of there. But overall, he said that they need more funding. And the worst is that most of the vehicles are damaged or broken. And this explains what another foreign fighter told me. The biggest problem of the Ukrainian army is planning and logistics. Getting fuel, food, ammo. It's all a bit chaotic. Now, by saying this, people will say I'm coping. How about you listen to what this Canadian journalist had to say? Talking with a few exhausted soldiers in Bakhmut, just back from the front lines. We don't have any new weapons here. New forces, nothing, says one of them. Another, who fought in 2014. I'm expected to fight a tank with my Kalashnikov. We're just cannon fodder. We're effed. Notice how the language is similar to the guys making the videos. Talking to a friend who is around Izium, he straight up told me some units have AKs and RPGs, and if lucky, an NLAW. Other units, such as them, have tanks, NLAWs, javelins, and BMTs. It's haves and have-nots. His unit is considered elite though.
It's going relatively well for the Ukrainians.
And this proved the point we made earlier. The best units get the best equipment, and the others get nothing. Now, in the grand scheme of things, it wouldn't matter much if territorial defense unit would do their actual job, that is to be at the rear to defend ammunition depots, crossroads, bridges. But now they're sent with little training and barely any ammo to the front line to fill the gaps. I don't think it's acceptable. Just imagine the Russians planning an offensive. They know where territorial units are located and they will simply attack these units. And it will just crack. Heavy losses. Look, today I don't want any trouble. We'll take source material from mainstream. According to President Zelensky, about 600 Ukrainian soldiers are killed or wounded every day in Donbass. AFP. At 21 years old, Samoilov, an officer that did not yet graduate from the Odessa Military Academy, finds himself managing 130 conscripts, often twice his age. So you're telling me that this guy, who did not even finish his officer course, is now in charge of an entire company? Where's the captain? Where are all the lieutenants? The sergeants? The corporals? Who should have been there to take command if anything happens? Honestly, I always thought that this story was strange, possibly over dramatic. I never brought it up. Until I stumbled upon this article from the New York Times. You see, second mainstream article. In just one engagement on a small swath of the line in a forest north of the town of Slavyansk, sent about a dozen Ukrainian soldiers to a military hospital with harrowing shrapnel wounds. You ask how the fighting is going, said Alexander Kolesnikov, the commander of a company of soldiers fighting in the forest. Interviewed in an ambulance gurney outside a military hospital in Kramatorsk. There was a commander of the company. He was killed. There was another commander who was killed. A third commander was wounded. I am the fourth. What the hell? The fourth? Oh my god, this is horrible. But this could explain the story of that 21-year-old officer. All the other officers and NCOs, they got killed or wounded. Then in the story it says that Samoilov is in charge of 130 men. And most guys in their 30s and 40s. If we take into account what happened to the officers, it is unlikely that he's commanding the original company. Most likely there's also been a heavy rotation for infantry. Perhaps all the regulars that were there since day one were all killed or wounded, and that they were replaced by a reservist, older guys, that came to fill in the gaps. And even then, the unit at full strength should be around 150-200 men. Now they're down to 130. At this rate, we could even be witnessing a third or even fourth complete replacement of this infantry company. Who knows? Haters will say I'm one-sided, so you know what, hat trick. Washington Post. 70 people from my battalion were injured in the last week, said a soldier and ambulance driver just outside the hospital gates who identified himself only as Vlad, 29 years old. I lost too many friends. It's hard for me. I don't know how many. It's getting worse every day. The night before, he said, the shelling was so loud he hardly got any sleep. It's all artillery bombing down, he said. All the wounded are coming from shrapnel. Most guys in the trenches haven't even seen the enemy face to face. You see, it's all there. You just have to read between the lines to understand what's going on. And then the media will say the solution is More javelins, more money. Help is coming from the West. Since the past video, I really thought about it as to why would Ukrainian forces hold on to Severodonetsk and Lysychansk so much at the risk of an encirclement. It seems clear that Ukraine wants to hold on to Donbass at all costs, and through counterattacks they hope to stall Russian forces. Overall, the game plan is for these delaying actions to allow Ukraine to build a whole new army in the west of the country, fully equipped with state-of-the-art Western weapons, well-trained 100,000 men, and they would thrust the Russian army. A bit like at the Battle of Helm's Deep in The Lord of the Rings, where you see the men of Rohan holding the castle, hoping, waiting impatiently for the reinforcements to flank the army of orcs. And from what I heard, the major Ukraine offensive is meant for August. There's only a slight, tiny problem. If I heard about it, the Russians certainly did as well. So we can already eliminate the surprise factor. And a quick side note, the fact that they use August as a date could be a reference or heavily inspired by Operation Storm, a major Croatian counter-offensive launched in August 1995 that essentially wiped out the Serbian army within 4 days. And similarly to what the Ukrainians want to do, the Croatians have been trained for almost a year by NATO military personnel. Thing is, during Operation Storm, Ukrainian forces had a 4-to-1 advantage in both manpower and equipment, and years of battle experience behind. But it's still interesting to compare both situations. But currently the problem is that a lot of these heavy weapons meant to create that elite army in the west of Ukraine, all this military equipment was immediately transferred to the front in Donbass piecemeal. We're talking about the M777 howitzers that were manned by undertrained personnel and with reduced efficiency, or the French Caesar self-propelled howitzers, the Australian Bushmasters, or even the Polish T-72s. It's all already on the front line, and I understand the problem the Ukrainian army face. If they don't send this equipment, the front might collapse anyway. But if they send it, there's no reinforcements behind. At this rate, I'm questioning if there's even an army that's gonna come rescue these guys. So that's the question. Right now, Ukrainian forces hold on hope, but the moment they feel that there's nobody coming for them, what's left? Anyway, let me know what you thought of my analysis in the comment section below. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to help the channel, make sure to check out my Patreon. The link is in the description.